The Janitor's Last Day. Chapter 1. The Invisible Man. In Midtown Manhattan, where glass skyscrapers scrape the sky like sharpened knives and CEOs look down on the world like gods, nobody noticed the janitor. Not really. He moved like a shadow, gray uniform, busted sneakers, the same faded Yankees cap pulled low every night. No one asked his name. No one cared why he was always humming faintly to himself while buffing the marble floors of Sterling Technologies, a cybersecurity firm with government contracts and secrets worth billions. The staff called him OG, short for old guy, and chuckled behind his back. Some swore he was a felon. Others thought he didn't speak English. Most just assumed he was harmless, disposable, another nobody scrubbing the rich man's dirt. What they didn't know was that the janitor's name was Bayo Olatunji, and tonight was his last shift. Bayo moved slowly, methodically, pushing a squeaky mop bucket down the 47th floor corridor. It was nearly midnight, and the office was empty except for the blinking lights of computer monitors and the faint hum of the building servers. On the surface, nothing was unusual, but inside his pocket was a worn-out flash drive wrapped in cloth, and behind his tired eyes was a plan that had taken 10 years to build. Bayo hadn't always been invisible. Back in Lagos, he was a scholarship kid, a tech prodigy with a bright future. Until one bad decision, a failed protest, and a brutal police raid put him behind bars. His dreams died there. By the time he got out, no one would hire an ex-con. His degree meant nothing. His visa nearly expired. So, when a friend told him about a janitor opening in New York that came with a visa sponsorship, Bayo didn't ask questions. He came. He scrubbed. And for 6 long years, he disappeared into the background of Sterling Technologies. But he never stopped observing, never stopped remembering, never stopped planning. The truth was, Bayo had more access than anyone realized. Every night, he cleaned server rooms, executive offices, glass-walled boardrooms. He'd learned how their firewalls worked, how their physical security protocols were set. He'd watched employees enter passwords, studied their habits, memorized badge codes. In a world obsessed with digital locks, no one expects the janitor to be the key. And so, over the years, he became a ghost inside the machine, watching, waiting, assembling the pieces. He never meant to pull a heist. But 2 years ago, something snapped. It was a cold night in January. Bayo had returned from his second job, dead on his feet, only to find an eviction notice taped to his apartment door. His landlord had raised the rent again, and his sick brother back in Lagos needed surgery. That night, he sat in the break room of Sterling Technologies with a cracked cup of vending machine coffee and asked himself one question. What if I just take it? Not because he was a criminal, but because the game had always been rigged against him. And now, he finally knew how to beat it. Tonight was the final move. He rolled his mop bucket past the executive office suite. Inside, behind a glass door that required retina scans during the day, was a server cabinet housing the company's offline crypto storage wallets, used for transferring international assets, including hush funds and off-the-book payments. It was supposed to be impenetrable. But Bayo had cleaned that room over 500 times, and he knew about a tiny, undocumented service port tucked behind the cabinet, meant for IT maintenance. He slipped inside. The lights were dim, the room cold. He knelt behind the cabinet, pulled the rag from his pocket, and connected his flash drive to the port. His hands didn't shake. Not even a little. The terminal screen lit up. In a few seconds, He'd bypassed the low-level access layer, something he'd practiced hundreds of times in simulations he'd built on his beat-up laptop. He didn't need to crack Sterling's security. He just needed to convince it that he belonged. And it worked. The flash drive executed a custom script. Within seconds, he was staring at a list of multi-signature crypto wallets. Millions sat behind those cold wallets, some tied to shell companies, some to shady defense contractors. Funds the company never wanted anyone to trace. He didn't want all of it. That would be stupid. So he selected one, a dormant wallet linked to a consulting subsidiary registered in the Cayman Islands. It hadn't been touched in 18 months. Balance, $22,485,000. Bayo transferred $8.3 million. Not too much, not too little. Just enough to disappear. Then, he did something that would come to haunt Sterling Technologies for months. He replaced the wallet's activity logs with fabricated traffic, copied from another transaction earlier that month. The theft would look like routine internal movement. By the time the real owners noticed, if they noticed at all, the money would be long gone, split into decentralized crypto wallets and sent through a dozen privacy chains. He shut down the script, removed the drive, tucked it back into the rag, stood up, and just like that, the janitor left the room. Chapter 2. One Step Ahead. The next morning, Sterling Technologies buzzed with the usual corporate energy, coffee-fueled analysts staring at screens, executives in tailored suits shuffling between meetings, and security guards nodding at employees who flashed their badges without breaking stride. Nobody noticed the janitor walking out the front door. Bayo's shift had ended at 7:03 a.m. He exited like he always did, quietly, head down, backpack slung over one shoulder. Inside that bag was a USB drive, 2 burner phones, and a prepaid international debit card he'd loaded with just enough to get through the first few days. He didn't run. He walked, like a man who had nothing to fear and nothing left to lose. By 9:12 a.m., he was sitting in a cramped Airbnb in Queens, staring at a laptop screen as his crypto wallet confirmed the arrival of $8.3 million in Monero. Washed clean through a decentralized mixer he'd set up 6 weeks earlier. No names, no trace. Just a quiet number glowing on the screen. He closed the laptop, let out a long breath, and smiled for the first time in years. It was done, or so he thought. Back at Sterling HQ, nobody noticed anything wrong. The fake log entries Bayo planted were holding up. The security systems didn't flag any breach. The executive wallets showed the expected balances on the front-end dashboards. Everything looked fine. But then came the email. At 11:48 a.m., a financial compliance officer named Kara Moss received an automatic notice from a partner bank in Switzerland. Unusual transaction detected. Origin wallet inconsistencies. Please confirm activity linked to Cayman account ST-C481A. She frowned. Opened the report. The timestamp didn't match any recent transaction she remembered authorizing. She flagged it for a manual audit. By 2 p.m., the audit team had reviewed the Cayman wallet and discovered something subtle. The movement matched the amount of a legitimate transaction from the previous month, almost byte for byte. Too perfect. That's when a senior IT engineer named Vishal leaned back in his chair and muttered, "Wait, someone spoofed our internal logs." The alarm bells started ringing. Emergency meetings were called, legal teams were looped in. The CFO went pale. A breach had occurred, not from the outside, but from within. Clean, precise, devastating. Get building access logs. run facial ID, review the janitorial shifts from last night. The head of security barked. Bayo's name was on the list. A camera outside the server room caught a partial glimpse of his shoulder at 11:39 p.m. The angle was blurry, but it was enough. He used his badge, Vishal said, staring at the access logs. Jesus Christ. The janitor got into the cold wallet. By 5 p.m., Bayo Olatunji was the most wanted man in New York City. But no one knew where he was, and he planned to keep it that way. That night, Bayo dyed his beard, threw his Yankees cap in the trash, and boarded a 9:15 p.m. bus out of the city under the name Samuel Daniels, using one of the 3 fake IDs he'd created through a darknet contact months ago. His plan was not just escape, it was disappearance. He had studied other heist stories. Most thieves got greedy, loud, or cocky. Not him. He wasn't in it for thrills. He wanted peace. The bus rolled north through New England, past snowy fields and sleepy towns. Bayo watched the frost gather on the windows, his mind quiet for the first time in years. But even now, he couldn't stop thinking about what came next. He had more to do. This wasn't just about stealing money. It was about reclaiming his name, his dignity, his future. And for that, he'd have to go deeper than anyone thought. Chapter 3. The Second Layer. Bayo didn't go to South America or the Caribbean or anywhere people assumed someone would flee with millions. That's what they expected. Instead, 2 days after the breach, he checked into a cheap extended-stay motel in Worcester, Massachusetts, under a fake identity, and began the real part of his operation. He wasn't done. Because what no one at Sterling Technologies knew, not the IT team, not the executives, not even Bayo's old janitorial supervisor, was that the $8.3 million theft was just phase 1. The real score was still sitting inside Sterling's own encrypted cloud, and Bayo had the keys. 6 months before the heist, during a routine clean of the 46th floor conference room, Bayo had found a flash drive someone left plugged into a presentation laptop. Curious, he copied the contents before returning it. It was labeled Daedalus.pptx, a project name. He opened it later that night on a secure offline laptop and discovered what Sterling was really hiding. The company had developed an experimental AI surveillance tool, capable of cross-referencing live CCTV feeds, facial recognition, phone metadata, and private communications, sold under the table to foreign governments and contractors. It was illegal, highly illegal. But more importantly, the project was backed by off-the-books crypto payments, tens of millions, laundered through a rotating web of digital wallets, most of which were only partially anonymized. And Bayo had now stolen one of them. So here he was, in a dingy motel room, surrounded by discarded Red Bull cans and the soft glow of code scrolling across his screen. He was breaking into the Daedalus network, not to leak it, not to destroy it, but to quietly access the digital trail of the slush funds behind it. This time, he wasn't targeting Sterling's wallet. He was targeting their clients. He spent 3 days cross-referencing wallet hashes and transaction metadata until he found what he was looking for. A Singapore-based holding company used by a defense firm in Virginia. The wallet held 41.6 million USDC. Not technically sterlings, but dirty money, paid for surveillance contracts in countries where protest was a crime and journalism was a death sentence. Bayo didn't feel bad about taking it. He didn't touch all of it. That would draw attention. But he rerouted $12 million, to 6 new cold wallets under anonymous structures he'd spent months preparing through private keys and remote nodes. That brought his total stolen haul to over $20 million. He hadn't just pulled off the largest solo heist in modern digital history. He'd done it without ever touching a gun, wearing a mask, or leaving a fingerprint. But then, something he hadn't planned happened. On day 7, his burner phone rang, an unknown number. He almost ignored it. Then he picked up, a calm female voice. "We know who you are, Mr. Olatunji. We're not the police, and we're not after your money. We just want to talk." He froze. Chapter 4. The Ghost Offer. Bayo didn't respond right away. The woman on the other end of the line waited calmly. "We're not from Sterling," she said. "We're not law enforcement. We're the kind of people who monitor events like this. When someone beats the system in a way that makes the system look fragile." Still silent, Bayo's hand hovered over the power button on the phone. "Before you hang up," she continued, "just know this. If we wanted to hurt you, we would have. We've been tracking you since the mixer transfer." That did it. He didn't hang up, but now he was listening. "Who are you?" he asked finally. "A solution to your next problem." The call lasted 3 minutes. They wouldn't say who they were, only that they were a quiet organization that monitors high sophistication breaches across finance and defense, looking not to prosecute, but to recruit. "You embarrassed Sterling, and we like that." What they offered was simple. Wipe his trail, secure his new identity, and give him a new life. In exchange, he would work for them, in the shadows, using his skills to help them breach, analyze, and understand systems no one else could. No name, no face, just results. "You can say no," the woman said, "and you'll live like a fugitive. You'll always be looking over your shoulder. Eventually, someone will make a mistake, and someone else will be watching. Or you can be invisible, powerful, and free." Bayo didn't answer then. They gave him 48 hours. When the line disconnected, he stared at the phone like it might explode. He knew this was real, because only someone with resources beyond Sterling could have tracked the Monero transfer. And as much as Bayo hated being owned again, a part of him wanted to say yes. Because this wasn't just escape anymore. It was legacy. That night, he walked to the old train tracks behind the motel. Snow crunched underfoot. He looked up at the stars, remembering the childhood dreams that used to fill his head before life chewed them up. Dreams of building, of breaking barriers, of being brilliant in a world that didn't expect him to be. He'd spent 10 years being invisible. Now, he was the ghost in their systems. He went back to the motel, opened his laptop, typed one line into a secure channel using the untraceable VPN they'd left him. "I'm in." The next morning, a plane ticket appeared in his inbox. Destination, Zurich. Departure, 12:03 p.m. Seat, business class. Name, no one you know. Chapter 5. The Ghost's first job, Zurich, was clean. Too clean. Bayo walked through the arrivals terminal wearing tailored jeans, a black overcoat, and a scarf he didn't know how to wrap right. His face was different now, not surgically, but digitally. A blend of synthetic records, dummy passports, and a fully built backstory that would pass any border check. He was now Daniel K. Mensah, a half-Ghanaian, half-Swiss cybersecurity consultant with contracts across Europe and Dubai. A ghost walking in daylight. Waiting at baggage claim was a woman with a tablet. No sign, no name. She simply nodded when their eyes met. He followed her silently. They drove him to a nondescript office suite on the third floor of a building across from a Swiss private bank. Inside, the same voice from the phone greeted him. She didn't give a name, only a code name. Ruth. She spoke clearly, precisely. You were right to go for the wallets. You saw patterns even Sterling didn't encrypt fully. That's rare. You're not just good. You're clever in ways our analysts aren't trained to be. Now, we want to see what else you can do. The job was this. A multinational energy conglomerate had been skimming billions from infrastructure funds intended for war-torn countries. Bribes disguised as supply chain fluctuations. Fake contractors billing for non-existent work. Entire villages left without power, while bank accounts in Monaco swelled. They wanted proof, but not to go public, not yet. No, Ruth said. First, they wanted the money moved, rerouted into traceable NGO wallets and internal leak paths. But the heist had to be invisible. If done right, the conglomerate would think it was a systems error. Insurance would cover some. Internal audits would chalk it up to overseas loss. But billions would go missing, and no one would ever trace it to Bayo. He worked from a secure floor beneath the office, where 6 different language keyboards sat in front of him, and 6 clocks ticked out 6 time zones. He stayed for 28 days, barely sleeping, barely speaking, just breathing lines of code and unlocking encrypted black books of transactions written by men who thought no one would ever see them. On day 21, he cracked the final shell. On day 28, the funds moved. $1.2 billion. Distributed into 243 accounts, all clean. Ruth walked into the room as he sat in the aftermath. She placed a small velvet box beside his keyboard. He opened it. Inside, a single key to a property in Lisbon under a clean alias. Title deed, fully paid, no mortgage. And then she said, "Congratulations. You've just stolen more than anyone since the Panama Papers, without a single headline. You're one of us now." Chapter 6. The reckoning begins. Lisbon was warm, quiet, and anonymous. The kind of city where no one asked questions if you paid in cash and tipped well. Bayo's new apartment overlooked the Tagus River. Marble floors, soft leather, 2 balconies, and a rooftop he never used. It was more luxury than he needed. But that was the point. This was the reward. The rest of the world called people like him a criminal. Ruth's people called him elite. Still, money had never been the goal. Power was. Not the kind CEOs chased, not the kind presidents posed with. The real kind, the kind no one sees but everyone fears. And now, Bayo had it. He worked sparingly, never twice in the same month, never on any job he didn't choose. His only rule? No hits that helped the powerful steal from the powerless. He became a myth among intelligence communities. Codename, Ghostjack. No one knew his face. No one even knew what country he lived in. But when millions disappeared from a sanctioned billionaire slush fund in Monaco, when a far-right political party's secret crypto donations were rerouted to refugee shelters, when an African dictator's Swiss vault leaked to the press with a breadcrumb trail straight into The Hague, they all whispered the same name. Still, not everyone wanted him to succeed. By his third operation, there were whispers of a bounty. Sterling Technologies, the very company he humiliated, had hired private contractors. They couldn't admit he beat them, but they could make sure he didn't embarrass them again. So they hired hunters, digital bounty killers. One of them, a mercenary hacker named Stone, got close. Too close. Stone traced a signature in one of Bayo's throwaway wallets back to a server ping in Latvia. A small mistake. Bayo had been moving too fast. By the time stone breached the shell, Bayo had already wiped it. But he knew what it meant. The next time, he might not get lucky. So he disappeared again, burned 3 identities, moved to Malaga under the name Luis Adebayo Montoya. But he wasn't done, because now it was personal. That night, he sat on his rooftop with a glass of wine, overlooking the city lights. Somewhere across the world, Sterling still existed, still operated, still cashed in on surveillance, corruption, and fear. Bayo could live in peace now. But something inside him wanted more. He didn't want to just disappear. He wanted to leave a message. He opened his laptop, connected to a dormant node he hadn't touched in over a year. Inside was a program he'd started during his janitor days, something he never finished, because back then, he hadn't believed in himself enough to try. A tool that could crawl through corporate databases, identify shadow wallets, and silently reroute funds to randomized charities, whistleblowers, and leakers. He called it Flicker, because it would burn fast and leave a trail no one could stop. Chapter 7. The day the lights blinked. Bayo launched Flicker at 3:03 a.m. Lisbon time. Not for drama, but precision. Global markets were just about to shift. U.S. pre-market was heating up, Europe was asleep, Asia distracted. It was the quietest sliver of global attention, perfect for a storm. He sat cross-legged on the apartment floor, 6 screens aglow in front of him. Coffee cold, eyes clear. Initiating scan. Flicker was elegant. It didn't hack. It listened. It monitored transaction pulses, watched for invisible tremors, traced the roots of fake shell companies hiding under generic IT vendor names. When it identified corruption, it diverted. Cleanly, silently. Within 22 minutes, it had rerouted over $230 million from offshore laundering rings across Dubai, Panama, and Delaware. Not to Bayo. To triggers, NGOs, public leak sources, legal aid clinics, and, yes, one personal wallet. His. By dawn, Bayo had added $62 million to his personal stash, enough to disappear for 10 lifetimes. The rest, gone to the wind. But not before he left a note. A file attached to every diverted transaction. Just a line of code. Greetings from the janitor. I took out the trash. Within hours, the world noticed. A media firestorm erupted. Massive multinational firms, previously untouchable, suddenly found themselves under criminal investigation in 5 countries. 3 CEOs resigned. 1 disappeared entirely. Sterling Technologies. Their stock dropped 38% in a day. Whistleblowers emerged like weeds in sunlight. Their former CTO was arrested at Heathrow trying to board a private jet. And through it all, the myth grew. Ghostjack, a name no one could confirm, but everyone feared. Was he a collective? A rogue state actor? Some kind of AI? The truth? Just a janitor. A man they thought couldn't see them, until he cleaned the floor with them. Bayo? He vanished. For real this time. No digital trace, no new jobs, not a whisper. Some said he died. Some said he became a monk in Bhutan. But those who looked a little harder, really looked, swore they'd seen someone fitting his build at a roadside fruit stand outside Medellin, Colombia, smiling, simple, at peace. And in the months that followed, stories began popping up in the strangest places. A village in rural India received an anonymous donation to build solar infrastructure. A cancer patient in Detroit had their $180,000 bill mysteriously paid in full. A Ukrainian journalist on a government hit list resurfaced in Finland with a new identity and a house deed paid in cash. No one ever proved anything. But every time it happened, the same message echoed online. The janitor came back. End of story. The janitor's last day.